welcome everybody. You just saw the quick little intro we put together. We're trying to combine some personal fun. I've been coaching basketball for high schoolers for the last 15 years here locally in Northern California. And so we thought we'd put together a Fastbreak series with a little bit of fun for being competitive. And so I understand, Godard, at your company, you do something similar.
Yeah, no, we love talking about our peak culture. And also to me personally, I do love trail running, and we have a house up in Tahoe, so I love running up some peaks. And it's also to inspire our team to compete. And the P in peak stands for performance.
Nice.
And much like you do with your basketball teams, it's really teaching our teams, how do they achieve peak performance and really deliver for our customers.
Yeah, great. Well, with that, I just want to introduce and welcome everybody with a little bit of housekeeping notes. What you'll see throughout the presentation, you can actually queue up for some Q&A. The system here that we're on will allow you to queue up some questions, and then we might be able to take some questions at the end, towards the end of our presentation. So with that, I'll welcome everybody to the first Fastbreak series. What I love about this is to be able to talk to other people that are in the industry. And so what I'd love to do first is just introduce Godard. Has been a friend of mine for over 10 years, and I have personally used this particular platform we're going to talk about since back in my days at DocuSign. So with that, Godard, I just want to introduce you as obviously someone who's been in the SaaS space for many years. Amazing CPQ in the cloud technologies that have, you think about both steel brick and big machines. Not a lot of people go back to big machines. I go way back to big machines. And so, your career in terms of being an entrepreneur and having the background to pull all this stuff together has been quite impressive. And so what I'd love to do is just start off with, maybe you could just introduce yourself, and as well as tell us a little bit about G2 and kind of what the company mission is.
Yeah, no, and thank you, Joe, first of all, for having me. Always good to be with you, today virtually. And I think you're right. You and I both been in this industry now over 20 years, and it's been fun to work with you and get to know you. And but I started my career as a tech entrepreneur about over 20 years ago, building that company, Big Machines. And I think we were actually an early DocuSign partner, and that may have been where we first got to know each other. And ultimately, we scaled that company. It was acquired by Oracle. And we built another company in the CPQ space. And again, we were a DocuSign partner because all those quotes need signatures. And so it's great to work with you there. And eventually that company is acquired by Salesforce. And really all that experience building SaaS companies really inspired G2. And really, just our vision for G2 was to consumerize B2B buying. And you and I have been selling software for a long time, but I was always more as a software buyer, just frustrated by how hard it was to get real insights. And, there's traditional analysts out there like Gartner in the B2B tech world. And I just thought something more, it should be easier to buy software, more the way we shop on Amazon, TripAdvisor, and all those platforms have trusted peer reviews. And really our vision was to bring, that same philosophy and that same trusted customer voice to B2B.
Yeah, that's great. And I think if you think about the trusted voice, it's really important in B2B, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go on. Let me just tell the group out there that's listening and joining us today, just 2 seconds on myself. Joe Fuca, I'm the CEO of Reputation.com. I have kind of a background in software all the way back to a few companies that you might recognize, PeopleSoft, which then of course turned into you could say in a weird way has turned into Workday, but Godard, you know what I mean by that, because most of the people that were at PeopleSoft went over to Workday. And then I spent some time at a company called McAfee, and then I was one of the early executives at DocuSign back in 2011 when we were a mighty 150 people with 25 million. Trying to create a space called e-signature. And that was a lot of fun. And then of course, now I'm the CEO of Reputation.com. And really all along the way, the idea of having customers speak about your products and then being able to set those products up in a competitive way has always been really important to me. And so, one of the things I'll ask you to kind of kick us off today is if we think about being competitive and staying ahead of our competition, give me a little bit of an example at G2 in terms of how do people use the platform to be competitive and to be number one or to win in their space. And give me a couple of comments there would be great.
Yeah, and I think one example that immediately comes to mind is Zoom. And obviously Zoom has become so ubiquitous. I think my boys are doing school on Zoom right now, right here in my house. So it's really become everywhere. But I remember I first met Eric Wan when I was building Steelbrick. I think I met him in 2014. And we had a common investor in Emergence Capital. And frankly, I think back in 2014, everyone thought Eric had a bad idea because he'd actually built WebEx. He'd worked for Cisco building WebEx, and there's GoToMeeting. There are a whole bunch of platforms out there. Google has meetings and Hangouts, right? And everyone thought it was kind of baked. And why does the world need another video conferencing? So it was a very competitive market. And Eric, I remember at that time, actually had a hard time raising capital. And obviously the investors at Emergence Capital in hindsight were very smart because they did back him. And really the whole way Eric has competed, it is all about delivering happiness and making customers happier, and then using customer voice, customer word of mouth to build. And what has been exciting also for me as an entrepreneur is that, the G2 platform has been one of the platforms Eric has used to deliver, to prove he's delivering happiness and to parlay that customer voice. So he's got over 30,000 different customer reviews on G2, and he has become number one now in customer sat. And this actually happened maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And then I think it also positioned him obviously perfectly when COVID took over, because people knew that, Zoom does deliver happiness. It provides the best virtual meeting experience. And so he really took over the world. And I think just one of the most amazing entrepreneurs, and just amazing how he also used customer voice to compete and win in a very competitive market.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key things there. Being able to, you think about Zoom today. I mean, my gosh, you're talking about literally, one of the juggernauts of product that we need to use, especially during the COVID-19 timeframe. So, I think it's super important and really important that we have access to customers' data in order to be able to pull that off is really the key point there.
Yeah, and also I think, Joe, we talked earlier, I think you guys were also in a very competitive market at DocuSign. And I remember you talking about when you joined, it was really only a small $20 million company, and they hadn't yet become the standard in that category. And then I do remember we also, at that time, we launched e-signatures, actually one of the first categories we launched on G2 to capture customer reviews. And I do remember at some point also talking to your CEO Keith Kroc about it at the time, and because how did you guys? I mean, there were all those, I forget what Keith called them, but we had a lot of especially low cost competitors.
Well, let's be honest, he called them ankle biters. That was his big term back then.
I didn't want to use that term, but I think you look on G2, there's like 300 different e-signature tools. And how did you guys do that? And I think DocuSign does sell at a much higher price. Like, how did you guys differentiate?
Well, for us, it was really important as we created a space. It was really important to us to set ourselves a higher value point because we were more expensive than the competitors. We wanted to be able to make sure that we tested that by making sure that a lot of the Global 2000 would actually be able to use us inside of what we called transaction management. And so we created a new space called digital transaction management. And then we started to get a lot of our larger customers to really buy into the thought that, e-signature was just one little piece of an entire transaction. And so you had security, you had identification, you had contracts. And so you had this whole process that everybody thought was just the signature. And then for us, it was, well, why don't we create a space? And so what we did by defining digital transaction management is we said, all right, let's get our customers to really define it, speak about it. And we use G2 in a really strategic way, not just to talk about, do you like the product? Do you like the ease of use? But we actually used you guys in terms of creating a space. So I believe it was one of the first times that we, if you think about it, when you create a space, you want to get Gartner, you want to get Forrester. But you know what? Those two participated. But honestly, the G2 platform actually really, in a crowded sense, really helped us launch that platform in a way that, you had all these customers speaking about digital transaction management, which was much more strategic and way higher value than this little thing called e-signature. So I think that's a great example of using the platform.
Yeah, and I think customer voice, I think it was also very central to you guys. I think the other thing you did to get customer voice, I remember you built a big customer advisory board, and then you would have those companies speak for you.
Yeah, so let me spend a minute on reputation.com. So at reputation.com, we spend all of our energy and resources on allowing our customers to hear the customer's voice. So for those of you that are new to G2 and reputation.com, we're both in similar businesses. He's doing it obviously in a big way with software companies and B2B, which is great. I'm doing it with customers that touch consumers. And so if you think about the biggest companies in the world, General Motors, Ford, Kaiser Permanente, Ascension Healthcare, the largest property management company in Greystar, whoever touches actual consumers, what we do is we try to gather the voice of the customer in many places out there in terms of understanding where those customers are. And then we create something called the reputation score. And so as you guys can potentially see here, as I bring it up here, we gather all of the sentiment in one score. So if you've got review averages, you've got visibility in what we call the Google My Business pages, and then you've got engagement where you've got actual customers engaging with you and actually having to be able to understand whether they're engaging with that review. So if I give you a negative review, you respond, that's called engagement. And so we create what's called a reputation score. And I don't know if you do something similar at G2, but we try to have one metric that represents everything to do with the voice of the customer. And then in some industries, like auto, they'll actually use it as a tool to compare themselves against others. So if you look here on the screen, you can actually see what they'll do is they'll actually set up a rep score by dealership in a neighborhood. So here the example is Tampa, Florida, and you can actually look to see how you're doing listening to the voice of the customer in a neighborhood. So it really kind of brings it, it sort of brings it home for you on how you're doing listening to the voice of the customer locally. So it's a different business in that we're actually looking at all of those listening posts, bringing all those listening posts to one platform, creating a score that an executive can judge themselves against their own industry. So pretty cool. Talk to me a little bit about how you guys show the voice of the customer.
Yeah, no, and I love that, that you're really capturing customer voice everywhere. You also mentioned it could be on Twitter, right? Anywhere your brand's customers are talking, you guys talk to that and you help the brand learn from it, engage with it. And I think at G2, we do something similar. And I'd mentioned Zoom earlier and Eric Wan. And I think one of the, we are trying to bring basically what you're already, and I think in B2B, it's been much more prevalent. Reviews on Amazon, Google,
sure,
for a long time. But we do, like I mentioned, Zoom. But here you can see our score. We do also something similar, G2 score. And it's mainly based on these original reviews we capture on G2.com. And you can see here, Zoom has 28,277 reviews, over 4.5 star average. So that's obviously one of the scores. But then we also look at what's the recency of that. And we look at it by segment, because also in business software and B2B, a large enterprise might need a different solution than a mid-market company and SMB. And so then we also kind of filter our ratings. And it's probably analogous to, you said, a car dealer depends on their city or their region. And in B2B tech, and it's all global in the cloud, it depends more on, hey, what kind of industry are you in? What customer segment are you in? And so we turn all of that into a G2 score. And then you can see, like, overall, Zoom is number one for video conferencing. But there are also some niche vendors, like, let's say, for certain medical applications. Right. Different software vendors that for that particular application may have an even higher score. And that's kind of the nuance we bring to B2B.
I like that, because the other thing that you do, again, I'm a user, so it's easier for me to talk about. So you create these categories, much like I might do it for locations, right? You do categories, And I love the way you do it for specialties too, right? Because healthcare is a perfect example. We're really big in healthcare, and right now, telehealth is the thing. And so, let's think about COVID-19 together, and what has happened during COVID-19. And I think what's happened, not only from a industry perspective, but a lot of different industries have literally changed the way they go to market.
Yes.
And the great example there is, voice of the customer relative to telehealth is pretty important. So you might have applications that just do the telehealth piece, which, could be a great subcategory. And I love the way G2 does the categorization, where you're more flexible than, let's say, some of the, what I'll call the older traditional views from analysts. But maybe comment a little bit on that, because I think COVID-19 is impacting both of us a little bit differently.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think what's cool, we saw with COVID-19 is that all of a sudden every business in the world needed more digital tools, more digital software. And we're both in the technology industry, so we already had tools like Zoom, like Slack, that allowed us to collaborate and work pretty seamlessly virtually. But I think a lot of businesses, in reality, a lot of other industries didn't have that infrastructure. And so I think one thing we saw on G2.com overall, just a huge surge in traffic in those categories. I think video conferencing kind of, March, April was up 400% in traffic.
Yeah, I would imagine.
And, same thing for webinar software. Like right now we're on Bright Talk, that has reviews on G2. But we also saw some niche categories. You were talking about healthcare, but one of our most surging categories was HIPAA compliant messaging.
Yes.
In healthcare, all of a sudden, doctors, could no longer see patients in person. And so having, HIPAA, which I think is a medical standard for secure private messaging, but all of a sudden that category, which is a bit more niche, also blew up, I think up 380% in the number of people looking for it. And also gave an opportunity to some entrepreneurs like Jeff Tangney, the founder of Doximity. I don't know if you're familiar with Doximity, but it's kind of a LinkedIn for doctors. And they actually right away, for when COVID hit, they launched a secure messaging way for doctors to talk to their patients through Doximity. And then, that also really accelerated their growth. And so I think this whole shift to digital, I think overall has been exciting because, we were able to be very helpful in the sense people all of a sudden needed digital tools.
Yeah.
How do you find them quickly? And so we were glad, we were able to help businesses across industries find those tools.
Yeah. And I think that's a big topic. For us, you can see here, basically, we have obviously the voice of the customer too. So if you think about one of our biggest customers, Graystar, they've been using our product to populate their social media. So one of the things that we do besides the voice of the customer is we actually allow our customers to publish their social content on their social platforms, as well as publish their social content on their Google My Business page. And so here's some examples of the largest property management firm in the world, Graystar, just doing some crisis management, right? Like whatever the basic thing that the consumers are wanting to feel safe, you've got your wash your hands, you've got your please wear a mask. And these are like basic things that our platform's actually generating on their social platform. So that's an example of sort of communicating directly to the consumer. We've got some other initiatives where they've used the voice of the customer to make business changes. In Godard, like think about this. So Enterprise Rental Car, one of our biggest customers, obviously they're reading all the reviews, they're reading all the comments in social posts, and they're saying, look, safety is a big deal. And so what they're doing is they've created a whole safety program where they're, making sure the consumer feels comfortable about what they've done to that rental car before you've stepped into it, which I think is really cool and super smart. Another one of our customers, General Motors, has seen the usage of what I'll call curbside assistance, which is, just pull your car up on the curbside and we'll take care of it on the service side for you. Everybody's moving to listening to the voice of the customer, which is how do I do these activities and be super safe? Because that's the mode during COVID-19. So I think it's really important that, both of us, whatever it is, the voice of the customer, be able to take real-time action on that. You're talking about complete business models changing on this. So I don't know if you have anything else there to comment, but you brought up some great examples too.
Yeah, no, and I think this has been a year of crisis. I think a really hard time for a lot of the world and a lot of people, and which are then also consumers and customers to brands. And I think every company, if they can listen more and help their customers more get through this crisis safely, I think that's a huge benefit. And I think one other thing we do also like to talk about, I think this 2020 has been a really tough year. And I think what we're really seeing is also, we like to talk about, we are in a crisis of trust right now, just in the whole world. I think we're having a hard time trusting our governments. I think no one seems to trust Facebook right now, and just in society in general, it's a real crisis. And I think we're more focused on B2B, but we're also seeing in B2B, and we did this interesting survey late last year, but the reality is also in our industry, B2B software and related services, the reality is our customers tend not to trust us. And Joe, and I know as an entrepreneur, I'm kind of in sales and in marketing, and sad reality is I think 94% of B2B buyers don't trust sales. And our CMO, Ryan, looked at this data. He's like, oh, wow, I can't feel any better. 93% don't trust marketing. And so that's making it harder to establish trust with a brand. And I think this is all even harder in times like COVID. And I think what we've learned, together with some of our customers, I love this quote from Brian Halligan. He's the founder of HubSpot, very successful marketing software company. Yeah. And I love what he says here. We really, and especially in this age, people only trust their peers. And it's really about, activating that customer voice, because, people aren't going to trust your sales and marketing, but they will trust peers. And I think that's what both our companies are all about. They know with reputation, it's getting that feedback, but then also amplifying it, because, people aren't going to trust me, right? They're not going to trust you because we're both kind of pitching our wares. But if they can, find a peer customer in a similar industry, a peer they can relate to, and that peer says great things about your platform, Joe. And actually, on what I'm also cool, reputation, I think you have over 400 or 500 great reviews, but you can point them to a peer, let's say peer CMO for a similar brand. Sure. And they will trust that. And so I think that's even just more true in times of COVID for marketers. You have to have an authentic customer voice.
One small thing I would say as a plug for all those software companies out there that are in the realm of looking for funding, looking for investments. If you already have a product in market and you have G2 reviews, what better thing to show your investor on how you take care of your customers? And I was telling Godard that, that happened to me about a year and a half ago when I started Reputation.com. It was like, I had investors looking at my G2 reviews, which was awesome because they came to me more knowledgeable. So for those of you that are proprietary, you're proprietors and you're trying to come up with the new scheme and new products, it's really important that you know that, and it's really important that you could use that platform in that way. Well, listen, with a few minutes that we have left, I wanted to touch on a little bit of what we're going to be doing together. We are actually looking at building a partnership together where we're actually going to start helping customers generate reviews on the G2 platform. So let me show you guys two quick examples here. So we, as a business, obviously, we're in the business of requesting reviews and building reviews out for our customers. And so what you see here is an example of a customer called Multicare, where they started to request reviews in guess which month? May of 2019. And so what you see there is that their review volume went through the roof. And by the way, their review volume not only went through the roof, but look at their positive to negatives, it pretty much stayed flat, right? So the concept there is the more reviews you get doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get more negatives. It actually means you're more in touch with your customers. And that's really important. And so what we're going to do in the world of both G2 and Reputation is we're going to actually build a simple survey for all of our B2B customers. And we're going to allow you to ask quick questions on that survey. And then what you'll do is you'll actually create a survey, get a question, and it'll say, we would be grateful if you would take a moment to share that review on G2. So instead of retyping in and reposting it, it'll automatically log you into your LinkedIn, which you obviously then would be able to leave your review automatically inside of the G2 platform. So for us, we think this is going to be a mega change to be able to provide this to our B2B customers, so that they can generate surveys, which generate reviews, which will in turn generate a lot more reviews on the G2 platform. So any comments there, Godard? I just wanted to show kind of a quick example of that.
Yeah, no, and we're really excited about the partnership, Joe. And I think also you guys have always been more in B2C and helping consumer brands. I think that's where all these trends tend to start, right? Is on consumer sites. And you mentioned car dealers and obviously Amazon, but reviews have always been there. And I think together we can really bring this to B2B. And I do think I am also a big believer more customer voice is always better. And I think there's been some interesting research I've seen on B2C reviews.
Sure.
You don't even want to be 5.0 stars. And we all get this as consumers. Like, we wouldn't trust that. If somebody has 1,000 5.0, I'm like, that's got to be fake. Because, there's always going to be some customers that have ideas to make your product better, or you just have some angry customers, right? And I think there's research that says ideally you're between kind of 4.2 and 4.6. And so I think but having more reviews, right? Because I think the key with that is it makes it more likely you find a peer. And in B2B, that makes it more likely, you're going to find a peer entrepreneur or CEO, Joe, in your case, or you can find a peer CMO or peer marketing director. And so more review volume will lead to more trust. And I think in this times of COVID, right, as brands, that's our number one challenge. How do we win trust of our customers, of our consumers? And I'm really excited together we can bring some of those B2B best practices that, with reputation, helping brands build trust with customers, and also bring that to B2B together. So really looking forward to working on that with you.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm excited about it. I think it'll be big for, because I know as a user of the G2 platform, you're always looking for creative ways to build more interaction with the voice of the customer. And we've already proven, as you saw on that chart, that once you request reviews after an event, in their case, most likely visiting one of their urgent care facilities, or in their case, a doctor's visit, simply ask for a quick review. And if you do that, like in the B2B world, it could be after a call center call, it could be after an issue that was resolved, and you'll naturally generate high volumes. So,
and actually, one thing like Zoom did, for example, was they tied it into when you log out of a Zoom, and they ask you, hey, did you like this meeting? If you say yes, they ask for a review. And so I think also in software and B2B, we can embed some of the stuff in app and tie it right into reputation flow. And so I think it'll be exciting the ways we can also stimulate more customer voice, more trust in B2B together.
Yeah, totally. Listen, just to finish up, we got about a minute left. We had a couple of questions. They're actually both triggered towards myself, but they could be you too. One of them was, can you share any trends in a brand's reputation score as it relates to the company's security and privacy practices? It's a great question. Basically, what we do is we take, for the rep score, we take in all of the reviews, social posts, the listings. And so really, if you think about the company's security and privacy practices, you want to be able to make sure that, you have machine learning there, so that inside those reviews and inside those postings, anything that's spoken about with security and private practices, you can actually pull up to a dashboard and then present that to your chief security officer. And I've seen that done in a couple of QBRs with us, which is really important. For us to be able to give you data within the data is super important. So great question. The other question I had was, do any of these products help with employee engagement and satisfaction of employee surveys? And the answer is yes. We actually added the ability to survey employees, hear the voice of the employee. And I don't know, Godard, if you ever did that on the G2 platform, but I know for us, it's really important to add that as part of the compass there.
And we actually do put in our G2 overall score, we put a small weight actually into Glassdoor score, because, and I think also this is something Eric Wan talks about, but I think happy employees correlate to happy customers.
Yeah.
And we both believe this as CEOs. If you don't take care of your employees and they're not happy and engaged, they're not going to take great care of your customers. And so I think that's a terrific question, but I do think they correlate very strongly.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, listen, I'm so excited that you helped us participate in our first Fastbreak series. I know we've come up to the end of our 30 minutes. Great insights from you. A lot of fun always working with you. I know you're both of us are very passionate about making sure our employees are safe during this time. Both of us have a lot of California employees, so hopefully everybody's staying safe with all these fires happening, along with the the COVID initiatives of staying in place. But just want to say thank you to you for participating, and wish everybody out there a safe safe week, and we appreciate you guys joining us today. So have a great day and a great week.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, take care.
Take care.
See ya.